World War II, oops, woohoo, excuse me. After World War II, we had sort of a capital labor accord that the owners of businesses and the workers said, okay, here's the deal. If you increase wages every year, we promise not to strike for higher wages. And then the owners said, well, that's good, because the more the money they have, the more and more crap they can buy. Awesome idea. But then someone realized right around here, well, hey man, our profits have been falling little by little each year. Because ultimately, all the value that we produce is produced by labor. And it's got to come from somewhere, right? And so when you talk about, okay, so where do profits come from? People say, oh, it comes from risk. It's the reward that people get for risking nothing. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's like saying that like the profit you win from gambling comes from risk. No, it comes from random chance, and it comes from the casino paying you money for happening to have a blackjack, all right? Profit comes from labor, workers. If you have, say, a block of iron and a block of wood, and the block of iron is worth $1, the block of wood is worth $1, I have $2 worth of stuff in my hands. But I bang them together and I make a hammer. I can sell the hammer for substantially more than $2 because now it's useful to someone. I have applied my labor to this block of iron and this chunk of wood to make it into something useful. So I'd say I charge $5 for that hammer. All that extra value from the 2 to the 5, that comes from me banging it together. But now let's say I ain't making the hammer myself. I work for someone, and this guy pays, $1 for the wood for a hammer and $1 for the iron for a hammer, and I bang them together. He's going to charge $5 for the hammer. How much is he paying me? I'm serious. How much is he going to pay me? If it's $2 for the materials for a hammer, and a hammer goes for $5, he can't pay me anything more than like $2.50, or else he's not making a profit. Well, where'd that little value come from? That extra money that he takes away, that's profit. It's coming out of my labor. It's coming out of what I applied to that iron and that wood. And that's what this big gap here is. We are producing more. We can see in this big fat red line all the stuff we're making. This is across the board. Every worker in America is more productive now than they were 60 years ago. Thanks to BlackBerries and computers and working at home and teleconferencing, you work more hours for a lot harder for less each year because your wages are staying the same, and all that extra value that's being produced, you made it, but it's not yours. It goes to the companies. And so when we talk about saying, okay, the problem with private ownership is that it concentrates wealth into a few hands, the real problem is that it takes that wealth away from the people who actually produced it. And if we don't have that wealth, we can't spend it. And I'm not talking about buying Lexuses and buying Bahama vacations. I'm talking about food, clothing, housing, healthcare, education. Because actually, does that answer your question?
Kind of, but not really. I don't know that it's a state it could be answered. I don't know. But just why 1973?
Oh, right, sorry. 1973, it's because those profits were not growing as fast as they wanted.
Okay.
And someone realized we can outsource.
Okay.
Let's start making things in China.
Oh, sounds good.
Because this actually goes, right, this is a chart of wages falling or rising in 2008. Please note that there are only 5 states in the Union where the median wage, that's the wage of the person right in the 50% of the bell curve, median wage rose. That's Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, D.C., and Rhode Island. Everywhere else they fell. 10.4% in Oregon, 8% in Washington, effectively 10% in Texas, 10% in Utah, 10% in Mississippi, 11% in North Carolina, 12% in Michigan. No points for guessing what happened in Michigan, an economy completely dependent on industrial jobs. When you pay workers less, they feel it. And it's not as if these are millionaires who are making a little less each year. These are people without savings. They can't afford not to make more next year. They're already right on that threshold. Because when wages drop for most people, they have to determine what they have to go without. Okay, so maybe I don't need health insurance this year. Maybe, I have to work for those extra 2 weeks instead of taking a vacation. maybe, maybe I have to shop at Goodwill, and maybe my kid doesn't get a Christmas present this year. $5 doesn't seem like a lot of money. But $5 is the difference between real OJ and concentrate. $5 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's the difference between driving to work and taking the bus. $5 doesn't seem like a lot to us because we've got $5 to spare. But for the people who are right on that threshold, they don't have $5 to spare. And whether or not they get that extra 25 cents an hour on their minimum wage job makes a big difference to their standard of living. Because maybe now it's not between OJ and concentrate, maybe it's now between breaking even in debt. And debt is the most vicious cycle out there because it's basically impossible to get out of. And if you're wondering about that, talk to someone about the mortgage crisis. Food, clothing, housing. We got people being thrown out of their homes because they're taken advantage of by lenders. Never mind the taking advantage of lenders. Why couldn't they afford a home in the first place? How do you have 10 million people who couldn't afford a house? That's the real problem. So you got a lot of people, Democrats, Republicans, gesticulating very huge arms. Oh, we're going to save. No, you know what? You ain't going to save anything. You're going to find ways to send more money to the banks to pay off the loans that they shouldn't have made, so it's a win-win for them, and leave the same underlying problem in place. That people don't have enough money, hours, whatever, to pay for food, clothing, housing, healthcare, and education. And so we can see now how this system has failed. It's failed because it produces for profit, not for need. It's failed because all that wealth it produces ends up in the hands of 5 white guys in New York, not in the hands of people who need it. And it's failed because year after year, the people who do the work go without. And we get less and less and less. And I'm sorry to bum all y'all out about your job prospects in the future, but let's be realistic. We can't compete with India and China in terms of outsourcing. This is going to get worse, not better. It's not getting worse because the Chinese are manipulating their currency. It's getting worse because those businesses are making decisions based on what's good for us, what's good for the planet, what's good for the people in their communities. They're making decisions based on what's good for their bottom line. And it is cheaper to use effectively slave labor in places in Indonesia and Vietnam than it is to keep jobs here and keep people employed. And that's good business sense. And so we're not talking about refilling the flat tire. This is the metaphor I like. If you have a tire, it has a hole poked in it, you can keep refilling it with air. And you can day after day go to that air pump and put another 50 cents in and pump it up and it'll get you to work and back, and that's great. But it doesn't solve the problem that you all got a hole in your tire. Eventually you're going to need to replace it. This ain't so easy. You can't just put in a discount tire to get a new economic system. But we have to go beyond the mentality of band-aid it up and it'll be okay. We can't just survive. We can't just say, oh, just get us out of debt crisis. The New Deal was great. It got us out of the Depression. 80 years later, we're looking at another one. It didn't fix anything. There's no New Deal coming around. We can't accept just filling up that tire to get us by for another 40 years. It's time that we say, no. I want something that ain't broke. I want something that fixes that problem. I'm done with reforming the institutions. I want better institutions. And so this is what we're talking about. We're going to replace for-profit production with network production. We're going to find a way to make it so that we're not producing what's profitable, we're producing what people need to match actual production with actual need. We're going to replace private ownership with citizen ownership. So that's not 5 guys in New York, it's the people in these communities, in the states, in the counties, where these businesses are run, where these businesses make money. Those are the people who are going to have a say in the economy. And we're going to replace wage labor with a negative income tax to guarantee an income. Right? Guarantee everybody food, clothing, housing, healthcare, education. And so, back in the early 20th century, there was this big debate between planning and the markets. Because, it's great to say, okay, we need a grocery list of all things to make and hand it to businesses, but it can't work that way. We need the market. I don't know if all y'all heard this kind of language, but the market decides. The market will direct investment and money to where it's most efficient. And then, I don't know quite about that, because the market isn't throwing darts at a dartboard. All right, guys in big expensive corporations who make lots of stuff do not